and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our June 7th Select Board meeting. And everyone's here. I think Heather might be at the meeting.
Heather's at the high school meeting. She needed to be there as rep. If she comes, she will obviously be late. Is going to text me and check in a little bit later.
All right, great. The first item on our agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. There's a small bookkeeping thing that we have to add to the agenda. Normally, we don't add things, or sometimes we take things off, but anything of importance, we usually don't make the additions this quick ahead of the meeting, but this is just a bookkeeping thing, a formality for the appointment of an alternative authorized representative on a source investigation project for the water company, for the water department. So I would entertain a motion to add that to our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So Ariana's the motion and Lee's the second. Any discussion on it? It should be quick. We'll just put it in after citizens' comments, I guess. All those in favor of adding that as an agenda item, please say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? So we'll put that in there. Next item is to approve our minutes from our May 17th meeting.
Make a motion to approve the May 17, 2023 meeting minutes.
Leaves the motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Ariana's a second. Any changes, corrections, omissions, errors, anything on the minutes?
I have none.
It's another beautiful job.
Susan.
All set.
Everybody all set with them?
Yep.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I want to second what Peter said. I think the meeting minutes have been outstanding lately.
Yes.
Right.
Susan does a good job.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Next item is citizens' comments. If there's someone here that would like to address the board regarding an issue that is not on the agenda, now would be the time to do so. Are there any citizens' comments? Anybody out there online?
Nope.
No citizens' comments. So the next item is the added agenda item to approve the appointment of an alternative authorized representative for the source investigation project for the water department. And that person would be Deb.
Yes, so I'm in the application as the authorized representative. Deb is our town treasurer. It makes sense for her to be the alternate. And on this project, they are requesting that, so.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Lee?
Second?
And Peter's the second. Any discussion on it? All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? This is the
That's the original. Yep.
This is for the secondary well.
This is the project for the secondary well. If you recall, you had approved 3, the wastewater asset management plan, the lead line inventory, and then this is the secondary well. The other 2 have been in motion for a while. This department is just getting caught up with its applications, so. But looks like the loan has been approved, which means that will get going very soon, so. Thanks.
On to old business. And Julie, can you take us through our old business list?
I can. So we have been talking about water rates, water sewer rates, increasing those rates. We definitely need to. Sil and I are going to be attending there just so happens to be a webinar or a seminar we're going to go to in Randolph, put on by, I think it's DEC, for Vermont on actually how to set water sewer rates, that all the factors that we should be looking at. I have never actually been to one. So since the next billing does not go out until August, we have time to do that. So Sil and I will be attending that next week. So in July, I would be proposing water sewer rates. I can tell you sewer, I've done the history, as Ariana asked, and I'll put that in the packet. But sewer has not been increased since 2014, and water has not been increased since 2018. So we are long overdue for increases. We should be looking at this annually. So we'll be coming with how we propose to, obviously we can't make up all those years, but I want to make sure that we're including any capital projects, because there are some coming forward for water and wastewater, to make sure that we are, number one, capturing our operational costs, because certainly since 2014, operational costs have gone up, and planning for capital a little better in water and wastewater. So that'll be coming in your July meeting.
Is it possible, Jeff had talked about rewriting the water and sewer rules or amending them? Is a possibility of that doing the same time as the rate change?
Potentially, I will chat with him.
Yep.
Yep, he's on vacation this week. He won't be back for another week and a half.
Okay, yeah.
But I will chat with him, yes.
And that's us, right? We are the water sewer.
You are the water sewer commissioner, so we'll hold a special meeting for you guys the same night as the select board meeting, and,
Put on a different hat.
yep. Okay. EMS news. So worth mentioning, it's been out on Facebook a fair amount, but Steve Vertife, who is our facilities director, was named First Responder of the Year by the Department of Public Safety, which is a pretty big deal in Vermont. So he is going to be presented with his award sometime in June, and I will get you that date. They'll be coming down and presenting it at the Public Safety Building. We're just waiting on confirmation of the date, so I will share that once I have it.
How did that come about?
So Mike Ranzio, your deputy chief, nominated him. All the chiefs and deputy chiefs throughout the state nominate who they feel are first responders, and Steve was chosen.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And so also worth mentioning is Mike Ranzio completed his IC and is now a certified instructor for EMS for our region and actually for the state. So he can instruct things at his level of certification. So right now, he can go all the way up to teaching an EMT course. So going forward, when we have EMTs that want training or new people that want to become EMTs, it's very difficult to find ICs in the state of Vermont to hold a class. We will be able to just hold one in-house, which is a very big savings to the town, because since Mike would be teaching, our students would attend basically for just the cost of the books if we're teaching.
Does that allow us to train other people and charge
It
them money
does.
for that?
So we'll talk more about this when we get under this agenda item, but it does. So like an example was, so if you're not aware, there is a new EMS academy that has been stood up in the town of Newfane. This has been asked for, pleaded, and begged for years, and it is finally opened. So Mike has made a lot of connections there and is actually one of the teachers now that he has his IC. So we had 2 of our EMTs that needed to get their tactical training. So they went. Mike was teaching the class. It's normally $450 or $500 apiece. Because Mike was teaching, Archie went for free. So it was instantly $1,000 savings, and that was just one example. So there's a lot that we can do going forward. We're just going to take baby steps, because there's a lot of doors being opened up, as I will talk about later. There's a lot we can do. We got to be careful how we progress and how quickly. But yeah, it's a huge step. So Mike's next challenge is he has been approved to challenge his advanced EMT. He does not have to do the course because he is a licensed nurse and has been an EMT for a number of years, so he is allowed to challenge. He's received that approval from the state. So that's a big deal for us.
That's fantastic.
It is fantastic.
One quick question.
Yeah.
IC, what does that stand for?
Instructor coordinator.
Instructor coordinator. Excellent. Nice job, Mike.
So we'll talk more EMS later in the meeting. Julian Corey's, I think you all have been notified, an application from Julian was filed. DRB hearing has been set for July 10th, 6 PM. There will be site visits. Chandler Road is at 3, Route 103 Corey at 4, and the Route 103 North Corey site visit is at 5. Jim Carroll will be at this meeting. He will be there for the purpose of guiding and instructing the DRB. This is a very, it's going to be a very litigical process, very much so. We want to make sure that we are not making any errors to leave loopholes, those types of things. So Julian's attorneys, I am sure, will be present as well, so we felt appropriate to have Jim down here by the side of the DRB. So there will be an expense for that, but I think it will be a well worth it expense.
And if there's more than 2 board members that are wishing to attend, just make sure to let us know.
And I'll throw
so
up a
we can
warning.
warn it.
Yeah.
We don't really have much to say in this case, but it's good to keep on top of it because it is going to be in the hands of the DRB, basically. But
Do you think there will be 3 of you?
Well, I'm going to go.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw up a warning, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay?
There you go.
All right,
I have it on my calendar, but.
okay, and I'll be there as well, so. Okay, I'll put a warning up, that way you guys are covered. Hennessy property, for those who remember, so the health order on Hennessy, it's been several months. Now, we've let time pass. Mr. Hennessy is still in a nursing home in Bennington. He is not expected to return home. We have been in communication with the brother. I am still hopeful to try to encourage Mr. Hennessy to let us do the phase 1 and enter into that involuntary tax sale process where we can then acquire the property, get Brownsfield's funding from the state, and clean it up. But he's got to approve of letting me do a phase 1 in order to do that. So we are working on that. Mr. Hennessy's brother and I have had some conversations. We're hoping that they can kind of maybe persuade him. So we are moving, we're trying to move forward, but these next steps are going to be difficult ones. And we're going to need his cooperation to some degree.
has he been approached with that specific question already, or this is just press?
No, he's been approached in the past. He, for a while, he really felt like he was going to go home. His brother felt that maybe there was more of an understanding that that's not going to happen. We're not 100% sure he's there. He does like Tom, so I may have Tom reach out on our end. He does not like me. So I will not be calling him. But I'm the bad town. So, and that's fine. So we will chat and probably have Tom or Mike as health officer reach out, and then if they're going to work on the brother sister side, the siblings, and see what they can convince him to do. So just an update. We haven't talked about it in a while, but we are trying to move forward. Police department mentioned in the past that we've been doing some research on the mental health services assist for PD. There have been some conversations with HCRS. Agreement has been reached. I gave you guys a copy of the agreement that we will be signing. Providing CPD with a police liaison as needed. Tom decided to start at that level, see how that works, and then increase. I mean, we have the potential to go to a part-time police liaison. We're not sure at this point we would use them. We'd like to kind of test the waters and see how this all works out, and monitor, increase those services as we go, hoping that maybe this person could provide some assistance with ambulance as well, but we need to just kind of test as we go and take slow steps there. But this is one step toward that, and again, I provided you guys with the agreement that once I get it, the final version, from HCRS, I will sign. Keeping in line with PD, we have hired a new admin assistant to the police department. We are very excited to welcome Alicia to our team. A great find, phenomenal hire. Alicia comes with a lot of experience, but she also comes with her degree in emergency management, which is a huge thing for me, because there's a fair amount of my filing cabinet that's going to get handed right over. There's a lot we can be doing, and there's a lot she will bring to the table. I know all of public safety is very happy to have her. She also has great grant writing experience, so you know what else is going to be heading over there. She is also certified as a peer-to-peer supporter. So she can work with Lori Cloud, who currently does that for us, for peer-to-peer support for all of the emergency services and first responders for the town, especially when we have really bad calls. It's helpful. Sorry.
Is Alicia local?
Alicia is from Springfield, so she is local. We are excited. There's a lot of opportunities with her. Not Heather. Our minds are kind of going crazy with the opportunities for her. She is very interested in also becoming an EMT, so that on those days when Mike's gone or whatever, we have somebody else that could respond. But the other interesting avenue is she is also interested in doing the part-time police academy, which means we would not necessarily have her on the road. What it means is that we could have an admin assistant, but also have a desk officer. So when a complaint comes in, instead of taking a name and phone number and one of the guys calling her back, she can actually take the complaint and she can process stuff. It will save a tremendous amount of time for the officers in the back who do need to be out and be on the roads. There's a lot of potential there. And she is interested in that. We're gonna give her a couple weeks, let her come in and get settled first before we ship her off. But she's a great addition to the police department. We are very lucky to have snagged her.
That's really amazing.
It is.
All the changes that are happening at the public safety building and
It's huge.
the advancements that are happening. It's really something that they should be proud of what they're doing there and how they're handling everything for the community. That's really
Absolutely.
fantastic news.
Well, I think one of the things that you have to realize is that when we step forward and we actually did a public safety building,
Yeah.
and we got the fire department out of the garage, and we got the police department out of the town hall, then, you're all in the same building.
Right.
That was a big genesis for
That's
them.
right.
A lot
And
of
that-
what's
yes.
happening here. So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can have a little pride in
Yeah.
what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, they do anyways, but it's,
Yeah.
they're providing a building that you can work out of.
What was that, only a 12-year process, or?
Come on, I was on 2 boards that it completely failed on.
Moving on, Yosemite, bids have been awarded. The bid has been awarded for the windows at Yosemite. Arcadia Restorations, they did the work at the Academy Building several years ago. Phenomenal job.
How many
So,
bids were there?
2, just 2. Which is fine, because Arcadia they do phenomenal work, and they're very reasonably priced. So they will do that work over the winter. What they do is they take those buildings up to their shop, they board up the window openings, and they do all the work over the winter time, come back in the spring. So they'll be restoring the windows, and then they will also be adding storms to those windows, and they will be doing the sliding door, restoration of the sliding door. So that work will be going. It seemed like there was something else I was supposed to tell you about. Oh, yes, electric on the green. We have gotten bids in for the electric on the green. The festival committee is going to donate around $10,000 that they have to donate toward the project. Between the parts, the labor, and the digging that will need to be done to bury, we're in the vicinity of $30,000. My thought is, and I haven't fully completed the thought, but my thought is that this may be something, but I'll throw it out there, why not? But this may be something that would be a good use of economic development funds. It's improvements to the green for events to be held on the green. So it is a direct connection. If anything is a good use of those funds, this would be good use of those funds. So I will bring that officially in a proposal for you guys to actually approve at your July at your July meeting.
We tapped those funds one year
For improvements to the green, we did.
Same thing.
We did. We don't have people looking for loans. You know, it's not like we're taking anything off the table. And like I said, I mean, it's improvement to the green for events that bring people into the community. So I feel like it does have a direct connection. So that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Do you know what the fund balance is?
It's a little over 400, so I have reached about a little over 400. I don't have the exact number.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have reached out to M&T, to Ramus, well, to Wilmington Trust now, to Ramus and Gary Gibbs. They will be coming at some point in July to give a presentation
Okay.
to you. But the fund balance is very healthy. It's still way above what we had initially put in, yeah.
Well, 30,000 is 1%, right?
We
Yeah.
haven't taken anything on it.
We haven't taken anything out for
It's just
years.
Building during the good years with the
Yeah,
stock and everything.
yeah. We haven't drawn on that in several years. So to me, it makes sense. So if anybody has other thoughts that say, no, that doesn't make sense, let me know. But that's kind of where I'm headed in my thought process. And that's all I have for old business, I think.
I had a few questions that have come up about old business. There's been talk about that Potash Brook Road property and getting the department involved in that also.
You got some stuff coming your way.
Okay. Well, then
Yeah. Mike and I have a meeting with Jim Carroll in the morning.
yeah.
We are likely to proceed with a health order. There's a couple hurdles on this one. Number one being that the property owner has been deemed incompetent and is in a state facility and has constitutional rights to attend a hearing. So we've got to talk with Jim about how all that works. This one's got a couple different hurdles. Mike is collecting tons of information, getting what we need. We've reached out to abutting property owners, not just abutting, all the property owners. You know, Mike's looking for statements from them. Those are coming in, I believe. We've gathered lots of photos, evidence of what we believe is a failed septic system, no evidence of potable water supply. So we've got grounds. We've just got to figure out how to get over this hurdle and move on to proceed with a health order. And I think Tim Roper has that question.
Mr. Roper, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Arnie if you and Lee could both bring your microphones a little bit closer. It's hard to hear you.
I'll
Thank
try,
you.
but I'm just about in it. Maybe, can you hear me now?
Yeah, one of those microphones doesn't pick up very well, and it seems like you got it.
Arnie's got it. Here, let's switch.
I'll try to speak louder, Tim.
Thank you.
Switch it. Maybe not.
It's weird. We're going to make it work.
Thanks. Old business, another question, solar. Everybody smiles about that one here.
I have emailed again, asked where we're at, because they were supposed to be getting an appraisal, their own appraisal. I still have yet to see anything. I will tell you, there is, I was up in Stratford at a conference yesterday, and was chatting with one of the ladies from USDA. USDA, it's going to be announced, I believe, mid-June, has a program opening up under the Inflation Reduction Act. You may know about this. Municipalities and nonprofits are eligible to apply. It will provide funding for municipalities to stand up their own solar farms and give back a 50% credit in grant form, so you could have 50% of your project funded for municipalities to stand up their own solar farms. So, interesting. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. It is USDA money. So, I doubt it's that simple. But it's going to be announced. I think it was either mid-June or mid-July. So, I'll be watching for that. I don't know. There's lots of land there with the ability to potentially add our own to cover the rest of municipal buildings. I don't know.
Well, I was curious about it only because at what point do we, like you're suggesting, do something else? Or is there somebody that we can contact or hire to make this process happen quicker? Because it seems like they're just going to give us the runaround.
Well, they don't have to sell it to us, and that's the thing. There's nothing that's requiring them to sell it to us. We just have the option. And so we can certainly bring the attorney, I mean, I will be talking with Jim tomorrow morning. I can certainly ask him to review. You know, you had mentioned that at one point. So I can certainly ask him to review the contract and find out if we can force the issue.
When I reviewed the contract, it seemed to me, and I'm not an attorney, that there was some language in there that may require them to at least be responsive to our request, but I obviously, it didn't say we shall sell it if you want to buy it.
Right.
But on the other hand, it was worded in such a way that there might be some leverage that we could have.
Yeah, it would be good to know from them if they have an intention of selling it. I mean, I'm sure everything's for sale for the right price.
Right.
But a fair and equitable price that makes sense would be what I think is what everybody should be trying to get, but that's not how business works.
I may have said this before, but one of my potential clients is Green Lantern, the original developer, and they also can't get any response from Greenbacker. So, they're related companies, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get information out of.
No, that's a shame, but that
It
it works
really
that
is.
way.
I don't understand how anybody can stay in business and act like that, because apparently they're just rolling in the dough, and they don't have any incentive to sell to us. And, if we wanted to buy it for 2.4 million, I'm sure they would be happy to sell it, but that's not reasonable.
Maybe as the attorney reviews the contract, is there anything that we could do on our end as far as raising rents or any costs? Because costs have been going skyrocket over the last 7 years, and a lot of these rents were put into place before all this stuff happened.
Well, they're on a separate, although it's rented, they're on a separate ticket for the town, for the listers. So they're paying taxes on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, my opinion was before, and it still is, if they want 1.2 on it,
That's the appraisal.
yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
2.4, actually.
2.4 is what.
2.4,
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it'd be
Double.
something interesting to pursue it, or at least get some questions answered about that. What can we do
Yeah,
on our
suddenly
end?
it may be for sale really cheap. Because the other thing is what Lee had brought up before, that, and I heard from somebody else too, that Chester's in the red grid-wise, that we're not going to be able to put on much more solar, if anything.
And go
heard
ahead,
that.
Peter, I'm sorry. Because,
It's, the grid, our feeders and everything else were done when the power was put in the 30s, so it's seeing a change in that is not coming too soon.
yeah, I heard the same thing, but then someone else explained it to me a little differently, that it was a cautionary thing, and it really wasn't a load thing, but there was more to it than just we're in the red. There was something else to it also, the fact that, no, we can't do anything in this area, and I forget the details on it. But it's a good question, and I'd be curious about what the real answer is on that, too. Because I've heard the same thing you do, oh, it's all red, you can't do anything. But I also heard, well, that's not exactly true.
But you
So-
couldn't, but if we're talking about taking USDA funds and putting in what would be a fair-sized solar farm, it's going to be a little different than, putting in a little bit for your house.
Oh, for sure.
Well, here's what the GMP solar map says: substation transformer with less than 10% capacity remaining. So that's the limitation. So whether it can take another 500 kilowatt or 750 kilowatt system, I don't know, but it'd be worth making some phone calls.
Do you want me to have the attorney review the contract to get answers to these questions? As far as can we force the sale and can we raise the rent?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All
And
right,
then-
I'll be talking to him tomorrow. I'll
Well,
ask.
it's a tax question as well as rent, because they're paying the tax value.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
the
and they're
appraisal
getting-
part of it, sure.
Right, and they're getting, I mean, they gave us a price of 2.4, but they're getting an appraisal. So when we get a copy of that appraisal, I will just hand it to the listers, because it's their appraisal that they're giving to us.
If we
So
ever get one.
we'll get it eventually. Just maybe time for me to retire, but we'll get it.
A couple other quick
Oh, dear.
questions. The wayfaring signage, that's going to be coming.
It's out to bid now,
They're out to bid, and they're coming in this month in June.
June 16th.
Is the kiosk for the Brookside Trail part of that also?
So there's going to be 2 kiosks, one down at Cobley and one on the green. And we are just beginning the process of actually designing the maps for the kiosk and what that's going to look like. And I have a couple people that I'm kind of bringing in to bounce ideas off of. But one thought was that one side of the kiosk has the map of the town, but the back side has the map of Brookside Trail, the map of all of our trails, actually, and then the map of the historic walking trail with a QR code that you can pull up on your phone. So that people can, people that are walking around would have access and see the Brookside Trail is there, and,
Is there going to be any signage right at the bridge on that trail too?
Other than the signage that's there now, not part of this. We certainly could do something, but it wouldn't be part of the wayfinding package. Yeah,
That was the question.
yeah. Not that we couldn't add something.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
curious at this point right
Yep.
now, just to
Yep.
have the right answer when people ask me questions. And
Absolutely.
a lot of times I open up my mouth and not the right thing comes out. The community gardens started about 2 weeks ago. They have 24 plots there. They're doing a great job. It's really coming out. It's
I saw pictures.
attractively, the way it's laid out and stuff. They've had the compost there, the little trails in between it and stuff. They're doing a good job. They've got 21 out of the 24 already spoken for.
Excellent.
So there's a lot of
Good.
interest in it, and a
Good.
lot of the abutting neighbors around
Good.
there that are actually taking part of it, that have smaller yards
Yep.
also.
Yep.
So it's working out well, and I just wanted to give them a thank you for all their hard work that they're doing, because it is all volunteers there
Yep.
that are doing this part of it with the
Yep.
digging and the shoveling.
And the guys have brought down one load of wood chips from the pit. They're going to be bringing another load,
Nice.
I think Friday.
They use them
Yep.
for their paths and stuff.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have anything for old business? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to our Housing Commission bylaws. In your packet, you had a little copy of the bylaws for the Housing Commission. Was this modeled over after
Essex Junction.
Essex Jones?
Yes, and then I made the changes that you guys had talked about of
Yep.
the, between 5 and 9 members.
Yep.
I think that was the only change that you had talked about.
I believe so.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything on it?
So I had an opportunity to just read through the mission statement. I'm a little bit uneasy with some of the language in there because it's talking about the mission is to help ensure that any resident or aspiring resident has access to a home that. So what does that mean, to ensure something? Does that actually bind us legally to make that happen? Or is I'm wondering if that's too strong a word. And I know this is just for the commission to help us to do whatever, but I'm also a little bit concerned. And the third bullet says the housing will ensure that any resident will have access to a home that is located with easy access to basic needs. So to me, again, this speaks to these housing opportunities being within the village. And but notwithstanding what Kathy Hasbrook told me last week about, well, when we have things further out of town, it raises costs due to emergency services, blah, blah. But also, I don't want to discount opportunities for people to live in a very rural part of town. So to me, it seems like we're focusing on that a little bit too much. And then the 5th bullet meets residents' special needs, including senior care, ADA accessibility, recovery housing for people who are homeless. So does this also box us into providing homes for people that, people need of all walks of life need housing, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do this, but I'm just wondering, are we boxing ourselves into or committing to providing homes for anybody that comes into town? Because that's, if you read this in its plain language, that's what it looks like to me. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we're maybe a little bit too broad in our mission statement. And I realize it is just a mission statement, but on the other hand, I don't want us to be painting ourselves into a corner that 10 years down the road, all of a sudden we are hit with costs or unexpected, unintended consequences of this language.
A little too specific, maybe, you're saying,
Well,
as
yeah.
opposed to broad.
More broad.
You know, I guess the biggest thing is to ensure. So that's said in here a couple of times.
Yep.
So I guess I would like to see that language tweaked just a little bit so that it's not making us.
More of assisting people in finding these?
Yeah, or maybe it's
Another word
to
for it.
provide housing for the community and not necessarily get into the weeds like we're getting in here.
Sure,
You know what I'm
like with the
saying?
bullet points, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, one thought, as opposed to stating that the Housing Commission is there to help a resident find housing, perhaps the Housing Commission is impaneled and something in language that has to move Chester towards having inventory that, A, is affordable, B, is accessible, C, is near. So something that doesn't say we'll help someone get into a house, but it says this commission is here to help our town develop inventory that meets these things.
Does
that feel-
So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not sure if I like that better, but the question is, what does that mean if we don't do that? You know, if Chester doesn't have that kind of housing available, is that language kind of making it look like we're not doing what we promised we were going to do?
Well, let's talk we're talking about the commission. So what is the commission's job? The commission's job is to guide the town towards developing these things.
Right.
So if it's not to ensure something, it's to help the town of Chester develop a housing inventory that includes. So their job is to help us develop an inventory. That doesn't lead us to any demonstrable benchmark to hit, which is unfortunate, but.
I don't know that I agree with that, because if their job is to help us as a town to do this, then we're committing as a town to do this. They're just helping us. So they no longer have the responsibility associated with guiding the town, but the town now takes on that responsibility,
What
I
if we
think.
said
I see how
develop
you're reading it.
inventory that may
I don't
include,
necessarily
or-
agree, but I see how you're reading it. and that
Yeah,
makes sense.
and again, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I also want to be clear that we're not setting ourselves up for something to happen that we're not intending.
Right. The word ensure, I have to agree with Lee, because is the Housing Commission going to manage housing? And so when you ensure that, you're actually saying that you're going to manage it. Now, I don't think we should get in the housing management business. You know, I don't think that that's necessarily a good
No.
idea. I like the word develop, because that's really what we're trying to do. You know, because I don't see us being the general contractor of putting this together. We're going to have to bring other things in here. I like, if you're there to develop these things and then they don't happen, you know, it just takes you more time. If you're ensuring that, it means that that's a guarantee.
You're committing to a result as opposed to a process.
Right.
Process.
Right.
Right.
It seems like these would be more aspirational goals.
Yes.
As opposed to something set in stone that we have to meet or obtain.
Right.
Because things could change in the future. These goals and aspirations could change in the future too. And I would think that the Housing Commission would have a lot to say on something like this too, also, as they go through their process of meeting and discussions and everything else that happens. This whole mission statement, though it is from us, I would think could be also changed with the advice or the recommendation of the committee also.
Oh,
If they saw
absolutely.
something that we were missing, or that they wanted to change for exactly some of the same reasons that you said too. And I do hear you, what you say when you say ensure. It's kind of like, it could end up in a lawsuit somewhere. It just seems like, oh, well,
exactly.
look, it says in your document that you have to have low-income housing, and you don't have enough. So
Right.
obviously, you're not doing your job, and whatever. It just kind of opens the door for something legal that maybe shouldn't be open. I mean, I agree with the basics parts of it and the aspirational part of it, but I don't want to bind us either.
Yeah,
Do we need Heather? I'm sorry. Do we need her, or do you want me to text back? Sorry.
It's up to her,
up to
whatever
her.
she wants.
Okay.
Where are the donuts?
Yeah.
Up to you. Okay.
I guess from my perspective, looking at this bullet list, I think we're being too, like you said before, I think we're being too specific about
Okay.
what we're going to include. And so maybe we just distill down that bullet list into something that's a little more generic, so that we're not saying we're going to provide this, or we're not saying that we're going to try to do what, I mean, the aspirational language aspect of it is good. I think we need to aspire to certain things, but also I don't want us to, again, get into a situation where we're facing a lawsuit or something that we didn't intend to happen is now being required because of what we said. So
Okay.
that was my main thought, was how do we, well, I'm going to use the word, ensure that we don't get into trouble.
Well, the only, if you look at it, okay, so just look at it line by line. Affordable housing, 30% threshold. I don't have any problem with that. You know, and desirable type for a household, you know, you're probably only going to go to 3-bedroom at the most. So, you know, if you have, what are you going to say? The desirable size of the household, I think that's why we have the housing committee look at it and tell us what we're talking about.
Yep.
You know, that's going to be part of their job. You know, they may say that. Located within easy access, you know, if healthcare, the clinic left, you know, we can't provide healthcare. You know, you're supposedly going to have healthcare there, so maybe you're going to try to get that down, you know, via walking, biking, or public transit. One of the changes that's in the bylaws, the PDUs now can be outside the village. You know, so if you change, so the sewer, you know, well, granted, you'd have to fight through the state of Vermont on the sewer, but in fact, you could have an eco village someplace if somebody put it up.
Peter,
And-
can I interrupt for 1 second? Would you consider, as we look at this document, the point is to create a housing commission?
Right.
We state right here the purpose in the next bullet point.
Next bullet point, yep.
It does feel a little bit like, as the select board who's creating the commission and getting these people kicked, getting the team kicked off, it may make sense for us to charge the newly found commission to coming up with their mission, and simply providing them with some of this as examples from Essex Junction or things that we've been discussing. Because at this point, I don't know how everybody else feels. If we're telling them what they're going to do before they come in, then they don't
But
have
they're
the chance
advisory to
create-
you, so you do need to kind of give them their role.
Yeah.
Okay.
What comes
Su-
first?
Susan Bailey just emailed me real quick. She said HUD's mission statement is to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and quality, affordable homes for all. So maybe that is your mission
Oh, there you
statement
go.
of this
Right.
It's a
commission.
pretty good one.
And just leave it there.
Yeah.
Yep, I
Love
like
that.
that.
Thank you,
Thank you, Susan.
Susan.
Right.
Oh, Hugh Quinn's got his hand up.
You're welcome.
Hugh, go ahead, Mr. Quinn.
Hey, yeah, I was just going to add that one way you might consider softening that mission statement is change the word ensure to maybe facilitate. It's a little softer. You still keep the spirit of what you hope the commission will do, but facilitate is a little different than ensure. It kind of implies you're going to, you know, collaborate and encourage and facilitate, but not guarantee. So just a thought.
Thank you, Hugh. That's.
I like the HUD
that-
language,
Yeah,
Very general.
Susan, yeah, I'm
Very
happy with
general.
that.
Okay, I'll make that change.
I'm wondering that this came from Essex Junction, this mission statement, and I wonder what the genesis was for them, whether it was guided by the state or not, or did it just come up on their own, from their own group?
Yeah, I'm not-
Sometimes I wonder.
Yep,
But the HUD one there, that's,
that's very general.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's a living document. I mean, this can be changed as things develop over time. Were there any other things that stood out to people?
I had one thing, but it was only, where it says a quorum consists of 5 members. If we're only going to have 5
Right.
members, then a quorum
Right.
would be a majority of the members.
Yep, yep.
Anybody else on anything?
I didn't have anything.
So we'll go with the HUD thing.
Yeah, I'll make those changes and put it on the next one.
Thank you.
Where'd I put it?
And one more side, as you're thinking about that, Otis is leaving regional planning,
Yes, he is. Yeah.
so they're going to be down to just 2 planners.
Well, they've advertised, hopefully they'll find someone.
Yeah.
One step up to the state job.
Oof.
Otis did a great job. over
Otis
the
did a
last
great
couple
job.
of
Overall
years and
transportation
stuff.
planner, yeah.
Yeah.
Rules of procedure.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, do you need mine?
I had it all laid out. Oh, there they are. Yep, the next item on our agenda is the rules of procedure. Everybody has a fresh corrected copy with the changes that we discussed at our last meeting. Everybody had a chance to go over them, make sure they're all okay and it's written the way we decided it was going to be. And I would entertain a motion to officially adopt our rules of procedure for the select board as written on the procedure form that you have in front of you, that you got in your packet.
So moved.
Second?
So Lee's the motion, Ariana's the second. Any other discussion on it? And this gets revised or looked at every year if we decide that something has to change on it, but I think it's pretty much what we've been going by over the years anyways, but it's more official now, I guess. All those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? You had to take a walk.
Why does Microsoft do that?
And the next item on our agenda is a discussion regarding the ambulance service and an additional position that we're looking to fill. Julie, can you take us through this?
I can. So, our ambulance service has arrived. We are at a place where got a lot of work, a lot of conversations, a lot of research gone into this. And feeling that it's time, we would like to add a second full-time position to the ambulance service. While we were doing the research, kind of preparing for the thought of this, a lot of things that we looked into were, what would this person be doing, while they're waiting for that call? What are the statistics? How is it supported? So Mike did some extensive research. We learned that 68% of our calls are during the day, which is a high number, and that our median age of Chester residents is 55. With the loss of the clinic, and kind of what's going on in the healthcare world today, medical services are not as readily available as they have been in years past. And thinking about what we would want this person to be, or this department to become, I think is more the question. We talked about, Mike is getting ready to be an advanced EMT. We already have another. Jeff Nisley is our advanced EMT. Boy, if we had this third advanced EMT, this next person would need to either be an advanced or be able to become an advanced, in a year. There's a lot we could do, and a whole shift. So there's a movement across the country. Mike did some research on this with this EMS Agenda 2050 is the name of this program. And it's looking at EMS as a whole across the country and the conversation about EMS services moving more towards a community health service because of what is happening in the healthcare system in this country. And so that has sparked a lot of conversation. Mike has had many conversations with Springfield Hospital and the medical director there that we operate under. And there is a lot that we could do. The whole public safety department, as we all know, we've been talking about it, is becoming more community oriented. It's not just police that's doing community policing. Public safety in general is playing more of a community role. So, an example just happened yesterday. Yesterday, we had an elderly woman who has medical issues, recently had some brain trauma, lives at home, kids are not around, needed to get connected with Life Alert. No ability or knowledge, very confused as to how do I do that. Mike and one of the other EMTs for the town went over, met with her, got her connected, spent a couple hours with her, is my understanding, got her connected. When the equipment comes in, we'll go back, continue getting her connected so that she can be more proactive in if there should be an issue. Mike has met there's been a lot, and Tom as well, has been a lot of conversations with the senior center and some of our known seniors that we, frequent. How would they feel about, they have to have blood pressure checks on a regular basis, those types of things. That's an outreach we could do. This person during the day could go and, maybe once a week, once a month, I don't know what the schedule would be, to do these blood pressure checks. Doing the Stop the Bleed program. We have several of our EMTs are certified trainers for Stop the Bleed. Being involved in the high school, CPR work. This is a person that could do local training, CPR trainings for staff at the high school, CPR training for kids at the high school. There's so many things. And then we can take it to the next level that we've really been talking a lot about, which is being able to do labs, blood draws here. One of the missing gaps, Mike has been speaking with the hospital, and we're having a lot of conversations about where are the gaps that are missing. And one of them is this, you've got some people that are on certain medicines that have to have blood draws weekly. Again, many of them elderly folks. So now what they have to do is they have to find transportation to get to Springfield Hospital to get labs done, because we no longer have a clinic here. Cancer patients who need to go up to Dartmouth to treatment. This has been run in a few times. You've got to have labs done before you can go. There's no facility here to do that. That is a service with advanced EMTs that we can provide. We go, we do the blood draws. There's a connection, there's a relationship with Springfield Hospital, so they're curried over there, and the lab testing and so on and so forth is done at the hospital. Yeah.
Is there billing for that?
I believe that there would be, and it's on kind of the revenue generating side of this, Mike is doing a lot of research on. But yes, some of these services are things that we can bill for, we can bill insurance companies for.
You're talking about, now, because you're almost talking about doing things that the visiting nurses were doing.
So,
yeah, here we
that's
go.
That's where we talk about where are their gaps, right? So one of the things at Springfield Hospital, if you want to come up there, you've had the conversations. Some of the gaps that Springfield Hospital has identified are, we have a couple of our social service organizations that are not as active as they used to be, I think primarily because of understaffing. But it's raising a big question, because these are organizations that our voters give money to every year, and the services that Chester is receiving in a lot of these areas are not there. Such as one of them going over to help this lady with Life Alert. They were not willing to do that. So, you know, but again, I think you're talking about staffing, you're talking about volunteerism. It's not that they don't want to, but there's gaps. And this may be an area where Chester taking more of a community health approach could help with some of that. I don't see us doing it. I think I see it being something that you sign up for. I see it being something that could be billed for. Certainly the lab piece. There's an element of this that's also just providing community health, like the blood pressure checks and some of the trainings and some of those types of things. The other thing that this does do by having the second person is Mike is our health officer. It frees up a fair amount of time for him to be able to do that, but it also frees up time for him to be able to do a lot of our trainings for fire, police, ambulance, we can do in-house. So it frees up a fair amount of money in the training budget long-term, which would be helpful. But certainly also having 3 As allows us to bill a lot of our calls at an ALS rate, which is much higher. It's a much higher rate, so revenue generating would be increased as well. And it gives us somebody on staff 7 days a week during the daytime hours, which is really where we're short. So it kind of helps with that gap as well. And I know there's probably been things I've missed.
So if I could ask a couple questions.
Yes.
One is, have we done a estimate of what the income would be versus the cost? So if we're able to bill the services at the ALS rate rather than the BLS rate, is that going to pay for a certain percentage of the new hires' costs?
So in your packet, so these are, some assumptions have been made, okay? So we are assuming, number one, it's an AEMT that we're hiring, or will become within a year. So their salary is going to be somewhere in the $50,000 range, $50,000 to $52,000. So that, with the other costs of personnel that it's going to offset, that saves about 23, so close to half. If the second cert is, or the second AEMT, and assuming we have 500 calls, if 50% of those calls are ALS calls, that increases the revenue, assuming 100% payment, that increases the revenue by $100,000, $105,000. Again, some assumptions in there, but even if you only had 50% of payment, which we have way more than 50% of payment, even if you only had 50% of payment, you've paid back your position.
So my second question relates to, do we know why the clinic closed down and left town? And is there some
Yeah, is somebody else going to come in?
option for enticing somebody to come back?
So you're not going to get Springfield Hospital to come back. That's not going to happen. That was a numbers issue.
It was, and they're affiliated with Springfield Hospital, and they
Yeah.
consolidated and did
Yeah,
what
and
they
that's
did.
fine. I
But
kind of
what-
figured that was
Yeah.
the case, but is there any potential for us to entice somebody else?
So, I can't answer that, but no, I don't foresee, Springfield Hospital is continuing to downsize, so I'm not seeing that they're going to expand. What we are in conversation with is, because Springfield Hospital, I mean, they're interested in us taking on this role. So we're also interested in having them help pay for the position. If we're going to take, because us taking on some of these services frees them up, right? Like their staff are way overworked, and they don't have staff for a fair number of things. So by us taking on some of these calls for somebody coming over there just to get their blood drawn when their lab techs are way behind, saves them. So there will be conversations, Mike is dropping those hints here and there, about, so Springfield Hospital, you know, how do you fit in? We're saving you some money, maybe there is some money that could be shifted towards this position. And those are conversations that are having, go ahead.
So some of the insurance companies, when you, let's say you break your leg and you go into the hospital, you get an X amount of dollars for that one visit, for that one issue. You get discharged, you go home. If you get readmitted, re-seen again, you only get that one lump of sum of money. So the idea is, and Rescue Inc. is also starting to do this now, is if we do like home visits, preventative types of medicine, we're saving the hospital money by not having that person, fall and then, oh, well, now we have to get reevaluated, so now they're going back to the hospital. At some point, you burn out all that money that was given for that one injury. So the idea is that working with Springfield, at some point, we can come to an agreement where maybe they're covering a cost of this, because we are, in a way, saving them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, who was that?
Mike Ranzio?
Okay, thank you.
And it seems like, we're not trying to make money on this. We're trying to help the community provide a service and do it cost effective. We don't want to lose money if it's possible, but if there's ways to do this that are innovative, new, different, and that are going to work for the people in the town and for the hospital, I think it'd be something to pursue, to check out, to see how it works and how it happens. And this employee would be a step in that direction.
Correct. Correct. These are things that we could provide. I mean, we need the second person to meet call demands. That's, at the end of the day, that's the need, right? So the conversation about, okay, how do we justify it other than some calls? Like, what is this? I'm not going to pay somebody $50,000 to just sit at the station, right, waiting for a call. So what are other ways we could use this? And this conversation about community EMS service has been going on for a while, been going on for a couple of years. This just seemed to be the impetus to say, okay, let's really dig into this and really see, what does this look like? And the more Mike dug, the more he's finding, this is kind of where EMS in the nation is starting to head, is playing more of a community health role, trying to be more preemptive.
Mike, did you ask the people down in Brattleboro how they were billing this?
It's a partnership through the hospital.
Partnership through their hospital. Yeah.
With BMH, they have some kind of a cost sharing system in place. So again, they're doing those post visits at the home, making sure that if there is a, let's say pain, maybe they can get the medication coming to manage their pain before having to go back to the hospital, now taking cost away from the hospital. So as they get paid from the insurance for that visit, they're now splitting that cost because the EMS is doing more of that outside of care.
The hospital is doing the billing.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, on that type of role, the hospital is doing the billing and there's a cost share.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of negotiating. I think there's a lot of conversations with Springfield Hospital about how do we make it work as far as their contribution. Like, those are details that are going to have to be worked out down the road. I mean, there's a lot of potential. I do not see all facets of this happening right off the bat. Like, we need to get the person in and develop this. This is a path we can start to go down. I think it needs to be evaluated as we start going down it to say, okay, we're ready to take on this piece, or we're ready to take on this piece, or what we need is the position, and then kind of, in my mind, the buy-in from the board to say, because this is a shift in how we provide EMS services. This is a shift. Where we are not just, the call comes out, we go get you, we take you to the hospital. It's taking more of a proactive role with our citizens, and so it's a shift.
But I think we got here because we're no longer able to do that first basic step.
Correct. We need that second
Right, so
person.
we're-
It's getting difficult. We've got some college students home, that's helping, they're going to be gone. We've got one leaving to go out west, so it's getting harder.
Yep.
That second full-time person is
So,
important.
a couple of more questions. One is, how are people going to avail themselves of the new services that we provide? How are we going to educate our townspeople to call instead of 911, call whatever?
So 911 is always going to be there for an emergency, but if someone has the sniffles or needs something in a non-emergency capacity, there's the Community Cares Network. They have connections with all of our elderly folk that either need some form of assistance, and they actually come to me asking, hey, is there any chance we can help, facilitate assisted living? It's just someone needs that person to sit down with them, fill out the paperwork, make those phone calls. But we also, I think we're meeting on the 12th with the senior apartments as a whole group, and that's going to be an introduction to that as well. As we'll be coming, so be preactive. If you want to be checked out, if you want your blood pressure checked, we'll be here from this time to this time, as well as they can call if there's an issue. The big thing will be always urging that if it's an emergency, though, call 911.
So do we pay for 911 calls, other than we have to roll a truck? I guess my question is there a financial benefit for us to have a second means of accessing these services besides calling 911?
I think so, because there's a majority of our calls are, someone has fallen. If we had done a home safety check and maybe we moved that shag carpet out of the way, that could have prevented that fall. So now instead of paying, 2 or 3 members to wake up in the middle of the night to go out to just lift someone up, if we had done a safety check, we could have cut that cost out. We also have people that are calling because they can't get their medication. Part of that would be that this person could then facilitate, go to the pharmacy, bring back their medication. So instead of them calling again, be like, can the ambulance bring me down? Well, no, we can bring you to the hospital, but now it's generated a cost.
Right.
And we've started to offset that with the refusal fee that we implemented this year, but it's still there.
Okay.
Well, and you still have the issue of, we have people in town that need the services. A lot of the other organizations are experiencing gaps. That's one of the big things that we're learning. But yet we still have people in town that need the services, and how could we meet that need without breaking our budget, right? I don't know, another thought that has run through my mind that we've thrown out there a few times is, Ludlow does a program where you pay a flat fee for ambulance services. Now, it could be a flat fee for ambulance services paid annually for things that are not emergencies. So for these types of things, maybe it's, $100 a year. I don't know what the cost would be. But so instead of billing, it's just something that you could buy into.
Subscribe.
I don't know. It's something that could be vetted through. We haven't done a lot of conversation about that piece. But there's definitely ways to generate revenue from it. But I think the primary focus is that we are shifting more towards a community health role, and does the select board supportive of making that shift?
I think it's a great idea. One of my concerns is, how do we educate people?
Correct.
Communication has got to be the most difficult thing that any of us do, especially in a government role, because nobody pays attention, nobody's listening, and, you're going to send this flyer out or knock on people's door, and the next thing they're going to do is call 911
Right.
instead of calling Communicares Network or
Right.
you personally, whatever.
I think that's where we use our social service organizations that Mike has made a lot of, and Tom have made a lot of strong
Yeah.
connections with. And I think we use them because they are connected. Family Center is connected to a demographic that I'm not necessarily connected to. And so I think, I think we use those groups in getting the word out.
There's a lot out there as far as information and help for seniors. Senior Solutions has a vast network of all different organizations that they work to. I think the education part would be really important, because that's the key to making this work instead of the 911. But I also think that the more contact that our emergency services people have with people that are in need or going to be needing their services, the better that service is going to be, because they're going to be aware of that person and their needs and their issues or
Right.
things before they even get there, because they've had contact with them before and stuff. So I think it would be extremely helpful to the citizens of our town that require the services like this.
And I think that us supporting local groups,
Right.
regional is great, but, if we're giving money to various groups and they're not actually here and they're not actually providing the services, I think that's a waste of money personally. So identifying and helping to fund these organizations that you guys know and work with and are right here in town, I think is a huge step.
I think this is a two-part question. And part one is, we obviously need to hire somebody. I think that the select board needs to come up now and say, yes, we need to fill this position. Two, then we sit there and say, I love plagiarization. I would love to know what Rescue's doing. Because they somehow, even with all their contracts falling apart, they've somehow managed to always kind of grow and sprout a little bit.
Mike is very well connected to Drew
Yeah,
from Rescue Inc.
plagiarization. I love to plagiarize things at work. It's just so much easier.
Borrowing.
Those conversations are taking place, Peter.
Right,
Yeah.
so I have no problem making a motion to hire this person now, and we're looking at a development of the position. So,
Which will happen over time. Like
which
I
will-
said,
yeah,
this is
it's-
not all happening like we
Right.
hire the person and bang, all this is implemented.
And with me, I have a tendency of getting people right before they go on vacation, so
Yep.
it's always a couple weeks before I hear anything.
well, no, I completely understand that, but everyone has made the point that we need the position now.
Yeah.
That the position can develop into a whole lot of things. It sounds like the whole board supports it, so I would put a motion on the floor to hire this person.
Hang it a- Yeah, all right. We still keep with the discussions afterwards. Peter's the motion, and Lee is the
Sorry,
second.
my hand is raised.
Yep, we'll get there, Lori, hang on.
Hang in, and further discussion on this. So, Heather, hang on a second. He's had his hand up for a while. We'll get right back to it. Quinn, Hugh, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's actually Lori.
Go ahead, Lori.
Hi, I'm a physical therapist and a healthcare provider, and a primary healthcare provider more and more every day, even in an outpatient setting here at my house, because what I know what you're speaking about is actually very pertinent everywhere around us. I see it every day. The healthcare desert that we're in, and I think it's awesome that we're getting services amped up with ambulance and for medical services, but I also believe that there's other, because I'm a licensed physical therapist and I have practice codes and what I can do and what I can't do, and I have a certain education, as do other medical professionals. This is a very complicated conversation to have, because is the EMT the best person to be providing community health? Or should we be looking at more an APRN or a PA or someone that has a broader medical background that's able to diagnose and treat and pick up on things? Or should they just should we create some sort of community health, as I know Londonderry has done, that is a little more comprehensive to really solving some of these really big problems that are going on? So I guess what I'm saying is I don't have the answers. I don't have the expertise in many ways. And I know, Mike, I'm really impressed with you and what your expertise is. And I know I have a niche too as a physical therapist, but this is a big problem. I know it's going on in our community, and I do feel this is a very complicated problem that we need to look at a little more comprehensively. To offer my expertise and my experience here, but I really think this is something I think would be really great for Chester. If we could include some other medical people that have the expertise with community health. There's people that are trained to do just this. That's it.
Thank you, Lori. Want to speak to that,
Absolutely.
Mike?
So part of the conversations I'm having is with the chief care coordinator through North Star. And so there's dedicated personnel that coordinate care, and that's kind of the capacity that we're looking to operate in, is in a way being a facilitator, as simple as even just having a phone call conversation with someone to get them set up on Life Alert. And what we're staying out of is the whole diagnosing side. It's more of just preventative. If you are having a high blood pressure, if you're having a headache with a stroke history, maybe it's just giving you that education. Like, there may be something going on now, so let's get ahead of it before you are having a full-blown stroke and you're needing 911 services. And the other part is a lot of this, we're acting within our license, as well as some of it's going to be under Springfield Hospital. So if we're doing blood draws, the AEMT is licensed to do that. But we will even go through the hospital's training so that we are doing it specifically how the hospital wants it, and in a way will be covered by the hospital. Does that kind of make sense?
Lori, are you still,
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I get that, and it's complicated. It's totally complicated, and yeah, right. I think that's the thing you have to be really careful about is that you're not going above and beyond your licensure, abilities, and we don't always know, what's going on with a person, and I do feel with the mean age of Chester at 55, that makes me older than that. I mean, raise your hand if you're above that. But it's a big problem. It's a potential big problem.
yeah, it is. It's a good first step for our town to offer more than we have been offering. I think it's a step in the right direction for our community also.
Well, and I think it's important to note, to Lori's potential concern, is that we are very aware of our scope. It is something that our providers are very aware of on every call that they go on, to be careful that they are operating within their means and not outside of those means. So these conversations are very in-depth conversations. Mike and Tom have had several of them. There are several more to come with Springfield Hospital, because our ambulance service runs under, we have a medical director that is an MD at Springfield Hospital, and anything that we do, he has to sign off on. So the conversations are had with him. And so how we operate and what we do is monitored by an MD. There is something over us holding us accountable to that, so that we don't function outside of our scope. So just so people understand, there are layers there. It is a complex problem, and a potentially complex solution, which is why there are so many conversations and many more to still come and develop as we start making this shift.
Now, one item on, I'm sorry, Heather, go ahead, because you did want to speak before.
Yeah, and I jumped in, and sorry,
I
I'm
know,
late.
go for it.
So, just devil's advocate here, the horse and the cart, if we're going to be looking at a partnership, is what I just understood with Springfield Hospital, and I know we're saving money, but we're also spending money, so that always makes me wonder, why wouldn't we engage that first and then hire a person? You have more leverage to go to Springfield Hospital and say, we're going to save you some bucks here, versus we're already doing it for them. We've taken the risk as Chester solely. We need it. It's a good citizens thing. But I'm just wondering, do we have the job description? Do we have the scope of practice? Do we have those things all lined up? Is it going to be before we hire someone, I think a little bit more direction may be beneficial. I'm all for the idea, but if we're going to ask other people to pitch in, I think maybe the time to do that is in the planning process, not after we do it.
And we can certainly have those conversations. The primary reason of why we need the position is to get ambulance calls responded to. It's not the community health part of it. That's the conversation that's kind of happening on the backside. The primary need is an EMT to answer calls during the day with Mike. That's the primary need. And we're going to have that need come early September.
Well, and in addition to that, what I want to say is, I know that from personal experience, believe me, the health officer role has just, it keeps on increasing. So I get all that. But in some ways, I think it would be a good time sooner than later to approach partners to participate. And it's great that we're making Springfield Hospital's job easier, but that's not really my job right now in this seat. So, if we're going to make their job easier, maybe they could pitch in sooner.
And that
Absolutely.
is one of the discussions that we'll be having.
It's a conversation
But
that's
if we
happening.
approve it, we need to push that forward,
Yeah.
because I think they need to come to the table.
And this hire would not happen till August?
We're thinking in August. By the time we get it out there, get it advertised, get somebody in. It seems to be, you got holiday in the middle of it, it'll be early to mid-August by the time we actually had somebody in place, I would assume.
Because
And that's the goal.
these monies are not in our budget.
These are not budgeted funds.
No.
So this
So
is gonna
It's
put
going to
us
affect the
over.
bottom line.
Well, we're already over an ambulance anyway.
Correct. We are.
Yeah, we are. We're already over because of the swap over.
We will be, right.
How much
Right.
are we?
As of the first quarter, we'd spent 39%, so you've taken a pretty good
Yep.
chunk already. But back and forth, but you're back to the bottom line isn't so much, we've taken a lot of things about saying what we could do in the future. The thing is, you need a warm body.
Yeah.
You got to answer the ambulance calls, and you need to have the backup. And if it has to, it has to shift. This is the one that's way over, but there are other things that are not near as high. I
Correct.
mean, the fire department has taken 10%.
Correct. We can hope, right, it's all part of balancing the budget, right, that
Don't have a
we
hurricane,
know and
we're in
we are
good shape.
aware, ambulance is gonna be over.
Right.
So we hope that there are savings elsewhere, and I mean, one revenue generating thing we had was was totally unexpected, was the hazmat call we had at the end of Elm Street. The guys got creative and billed the insurance company because it was a hazmat incident. Well, we laughed.
That's an interesting statement.
Between fire.
Creative in the bill.
Between fire, police, and ambulance brought in $22,000 in revenue.
Great.
Because they
Excellent.
locked up our services for many hours when it didn't need to. There were some errors on their part. We won't get into any of that. But we billed, right? I mean, there are some services that we should be billing for that we never have.
Right.
And this is one of them. And because we took a stab and we did it, it was a $22,000 revenue increase that was not budgeted. And that's offsetting labor only. So, there are other things that are happening. We're also, EMS rates are up. We've got the potential of some advanced EMTs. Again, ALS rates are much higher than BLS rates. So hopefully, to answer that issue, Peter, hopefully we will be offsetting.
And I think our revenue line's a little bit higher. It's a little more ahead than what we had projected already, just with the new rates.
Yep.
Well, you're into the second quarter.
So,
Unbelievable.
any more discussion, any more comments regarding this topic?
But we will absolutely, Heather, rise that financial conversation with Springfield Hospital
Well, and if
to
we're
sooner than
on
later.
the community aspect,
Yep.
I think it's really good
Yep.
to have the job descriptions reflect that.
Yep.
And the scope of practice be really clear.
Well, and that is what is being
Prior
discussed.
to-
Right.
Prior to doing that.
That's part of what Springfield Hospital is helping
That's
form.
sort of why I said there's a A and B to this question. Right now, we need a warm body to respond to calls. We should hire the warm body. B is, I think you need to come back to us, because these are all great ideas. It sounds like something we need. It needs to be filled out more, but you got to have a body. You
Correct.
got to have a body for the calls.
And we're having, in Springfield Hospital, so like there's a meeting coming up, I forget what they call that guy, the care coordinator. And the COO of Springfield Hospital, there's conversations going to be had about how do we build this job description? What are the services that we can do that are within our scope? How do we form this partnership? So everybody is still at the table forming the partnership. And in that discussion is going to come the conversations about, okay, so what are you contributing money-wise, So that, you're right, Peter, yes.
Yep.
The main thing is we need a person.
We need a
But
person.
here's the potential that we can go
With that person.
with that person.
Right.
And with the team that we're building.
When you're interviewing, the skills for just to fill the position, the warm body, it may be different than if you have this vision.
Correct, yeah.
So-
And there will be discussions about we're moving in this direction.
Though all the skills are going to be within their scope of practice, was set by the state. I mean, we're not looking at doing anything outside of that. It's just in a non-traditional role.
But if we're looking to develop this role in a non-traditional role down the road,
Right.
then it's really important that we have that vision when we're interviewing, but also have the person being interviewed know that this is this could
This is the vision for the future, and are you buying into that? Yeah, no, I got it, Heather, yep.
Yeah, that's an
Yep,
important.
it is, absolutely.
Yeah, Chief.
Hey, Tom Williams, Chief of Police and Chief of the Ambulance. Too many hats. I was going to answer Lee's question as to how do we get the information out to the people. We're going on the 911 calls. We go face-to-face with the people when they call 911. Getting the information out at that calls, here's another option. So you don't have to dial 911. You can step up and call. Here's the number you call to get some type of service, whatever we come up with in the future for that body from the ambulance to go out and do a blood pressure check, or just whatever we're allowed to do, whatever we're told we can do from the hospital, provide that service right on scene. So it's word of mouth. I'll call them the more frequent flyers, the people that need the service more. Those people, we see them all the time. So it's over and over education face-to-face, and here's a different option for you. With the future, the potential of what we can do, hopefully we're cutting some of that need off. We're going to be out there. The people talk to each other. There's a lot of communication going on amongst people in town. A lot of that communication will go person to person. We meet with the seniors at Senior Circle here with the Tenants Committee as public safety to discuss all sorts of stuff that they have concerns about at their establishment up there. Going to these things and putting out the information to them. That's a whole nother resource. Getting us more involved in the community itself with the different organizations, the different groups. I know the Chester Business Coalition. I spoke with one of the members at the beginning of the week, and they're very interested in how can we help. There's all sorts of ways that we can pass this out to other agencies, other groups within town to get the information out to everybody. It's a slow process. There's no quick way to do it. We can put blasts out on social media. Well, only the people that look at social media frequently are going to see that. Or if you talk to somebody that sees the social media and it happens to come up in a conversation, it's all, okay, we've got a little chunk there. Do we put out flyers? Do we send out something with your tax stuff? Just a little piece of information saying, hey, look what we've got. You know, different things like that, but.
And if we're increasing our services, then we should probably include that in the negotiations with Andover.
Absolutely.
If they want.
That's correct. These are services that would be provided to them as well, exactly. And it's going to be reflected in the.
They don't have to have this service necessarily, but if they do want it.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
get to help pay for it.
There's a
Absolutely.
lot of facets to this whole thing. And like Peter was saying, the initial thing is a person for the ambulance department. And the second part is all the expansion of all these other services and things that are possible with that person.
Well, and for us right now, for me right now, yes, we need the person, but is there even an interest in pursuing this shift? Because it is a dynamic shift in how we provide service. Is there an interest in this? It's the person, we need the person, but before we keep doing more work and keep having conversations with Springfield Hospital and keep showing that interest, is there even an interest of the board to start making this shift? And I
Well,
think
it
that's.
sure seems like there is. And
I think
guess
so too,
we're going to
but-
be having a
Yeah.
vote momentarily. That will, I
Yeah.
think, will verify that.
A lot of research to do.
I just had a second part to that too. So with the police department, with this MOU that we just put in front of you, and when the final one comes back, you'll get that also with a social worker. It's a contact directly with social services to provide us with a face-to-face or a specific person, so we can hang the responsibility on one person and not get 15 different phone calls for an incident that, well, we don't do that, call this person, or we don't do that. We don't have time to call 15 people in the middle of an emergency. We now have a contact. That contact will reach out and find the service that we need, or find the person that can provide the information that we need at the time. That's another avenue that not only the police department's going to use, we're going to use that in the ambulance, and that's already been spoken to with the people that I spoke to about the contract or about the MOU. It's just another way to get services in, and they have a lot of resources that they can reach out to that are far beyond anything that I can come up with just off the cuff, which is the purpose of getting them involved with the PD and the ambulance, and eventually we're going to push it towards the fire department too, to kind of look at what's going on in the background with all these folks. Is there some social need that they have that's perpetuating or starting these calls to us? Because we have the people that will call for other reasons. They don't need an ambulance, but they use the service, they tie up the service, and There's obviously something in the background that's driving that. Our goal is to get ahead of that so that we're not spending the town's money on extra things that don't need to, or tying up the resource for somebody that actually really will need it at that time. So involving this social services person with that aspect of it, that's kind of where we're headed with the PD and the ambulance. I don't have the say on the fire service, but from conversations I've had, I'm not going to get a fight with that either. I think it's going to be used. It's just how do we use it there?
I appreciate what you're trying to do, what you are doing, not trying to do, you are doing it. I think that as we as a community learn to look out for each other's interests, it serves us best. That's how, when we seek the welfare of the community where we live, we're all brought together, we're all brought up to a higher standard, and I think this is a good step forward in that plan, is to make sure that people are getting the attention that they need and doing it appropriately. So it's not dragging us all down, but it's giving us that ability to reach out and love our neighbors as we should.
From the management side of it, for Heather and, was it Lori?
Lori Quinn.
Acting outside the scope or figuring out what the scope is. EMS has a very specific scope. You're told what you can do, what you can't do. The medical director can also allow within that area of movement, which we cannot do anything without the medical director's approval. Obviously, anything going on in the hospital has to go through their chain of command, and I don't know where that runs in there. I guess it depends on what service you're going through, but all of that's being talked about in the background. That's where these meetings coming up. That is the future piece of this. And as you said, the idea is to get the coverage in there so that we're not, taking a cardiac call and waiting an extra 10, 15 minutes for someone to come back from Claremont shopping because they're the only person around to staff that ambulance. Yes, you can get mutual aid. Mutual aid costs money.
Yep.
You've got, I think, and I'm just speaking off the cuff, a $500 charge. You get another ambulance from anywhere around here to come. You've got $500 tacked on to whatever that bill is automatically because they're helping with mutual aid. So there are costs all over the place too, but that's what we're thinking in the background, is just getting that person in there. We establish the foundation of providing EMS at that level. And then if we can provide a better service with that base level, stepping it up to an AEMT, stepping it up to other services that, let's just put it out there, if they provide some kind of cost savings or some money coming in to offset, the taxpayer's not paying that, or let's say everybody's not paying that at that point because you're bringing in a little bit of revenue to kind of offset that money. So instead of paying $1,000, you're paying $500. Every little bit, if you add that up, is going to come out in the end as at least a little bit of savings. Something's better than nothing. So we're just looking for other avenues to try and increase the service, maybe be a little proactive on the EMS side instead of reactive to everything. You do it in law enforcement, why aren't we doing it elsewhere? Fire department puts on fire safety stuff. They put on things for the kids, programs for the kids, programs on smoke detectors. Where's EMS in that? EMS does a little bit of that stuff, but why aren't we physically out there being proactive with people's health to the point that we can? For us, I'll say it for myself, to get up and make a doctor's appointment, take a day off and go up to the office, it can be a real pain in the butt. Now for somebody that's homebound, who doesn't have the freedom to travel because of their car or their eyesight or something like that, now making an appointment is that much tougher. And let's say within that scope of practice, we can ease the burden on people here in town. That's a huge benefit. You may have just stopped a car accident because they're not supposed to be driving, but they're going to go get their medication and take the chances. There's a lot of things that we can't predict and put on paper. We're just showing a direction. But the immediate need is that that person to cover the ambulance call, because if the ambulance doesn't roll, you're by yourself wherever you're at waiting.
It's been some excellent discussions on this topic, and it's encouraging that we're being proactive and looking to the future. I mean, change is always happening in the medical world, in our community, as things change and things progress. It's good that we're addressing these issues and looking forward so that we're ready for them as we go forward. And it's for the better of the community, and that's kind of our job up here. Any other discussion, any other comments on this? so the motion was by Lee, I believe?
No, Peter.
Peter, and did you second it, Lee?
did, yeah.
To add a second full-time ambulance employee, probably starting somewhere around August or September.
Yeah,
Not that
that would be the
matters that
plan.
much, but all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No.
Great, thank you. And we will be reporting back. There will be, this shift to community health is not going to be happening without, without the support of the board. So we will be reporting back with a plan on that before steps are taken. So you'll be updated regularly on how that's progressing.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That was the good batch.
Future,
Thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
future agenda items, new business.
So can I just say something?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple new business things. So, first, highway safety grants have opened, they're due next Friday. We can apply for up to $35,000. This is more just informational to let you know that we're going to apply, it's pretty limited scope of what we can apply for. But we are going to apply for funding to do the white line striping of North Street, 103 within the town limits, Route 11 within the town limits, and there's another road there that's in the
35
town
you could
limits.
do.
Depot Street, Maple Street, all within our area of what we are allowed to do.
Does that include crosswalks?
No. So we are not allowed to use it for crosswalk painting because that is considered a maintenance item. However, I will tell you, so there's stuff coming on that. The other thing that we can use it for is the stop bars, the white, when you come up to a stop sign at an intersection. Huh?
It has to be a new stop bar. You can't replace an old stop bar.
Actually, according to the paperwork,
Yeah.
we just read through it all today. Yep, you can. So there are certain intersections within the village. Again, we're keeping
It'll
things
help.
within the village, correct?
But I think trying to be a walker-friendly town and trying to
So,
encourage,
yeah,
the
we-
crosswalks are a huge thing in this town because they wear off after.
Well, the guys are, Steve is going to be helping. The paint has finally arrived. Part of the reason that we haven't done this is because of the 1 year that a really poor job was done. We needed to let that fade before we could make them look decent again. So they have faded. So paint is, last year, you couldn't get the paint. This year, we do have the paint, so Steve and Kirby and a couple of the guys will be out doing them in the next couple of weeks. You'll see
But
crosswalks done.
part of this money was too, that the state's going to do all the work. The town doesn't do any of it, right?
We have to get bids. No,
No, we have to get bids?
we have to do
Oh,
the work.
huh.
Yeah.
That was not the way that it was presented.
Yeah, we read through all the guidance paperwork today. Yeah. Yeah.
That's just for information.
That's just for information. Sorry, I forgot what I was doing.
Oh, it's all
That's
right.
just for information.
Yep.
Also, the other thing that you guys will have coming up is the Planning Commission has approved their open space. They had their public hearing, and the amendments that y'all talked about. So,
Are you going to combine those two? Or
well,
will you do
that's
them
my
separate?
question. So there's not enough stuff to do a meeting on June 21st. So what I would love to propose for you guys, a lot of towns are doing this summer, is they are only holding one meeting in June, July, and August. If we do that, I don't know how everybody feels about it, but if we do that, we do need to have a meeting the first week of July because we have to set the tax rate. That's got to be set the first week of July. So that meeting is July 5th. Unless you want to move it to another night within that week. So, with regard to the zoning, we could either put them on the same night and do it on July 5th, or you could do one on July 5th and one the first meeting in August, if you agree to only have one meeting in July. You tell me how you guys want to do it.
They're both going to be pretty straightforward. One of them is just going to be the changes that we had on the first one that came. We don't have to have a public meeting again, or do we? We do.
No, you
because
do.
We do,
You do.
Yeah.
So you could combine them and do one public hearing.
for both,
Or you could have two public hearings, have the public hearing separate,
And still
and then just do
have-
them on the same night.
Right.
Or you can have two public hearings separate and do them on separate nights. Depends on how
Well,
many times you want to
I
meet.
think you're better off, if you need to have two public hearings, because then you could close.
It's easier.
One piece
Go to
could
the
be
next
just
one.
closed out if it's not a problem, and if the other one drags on, you haven't hooked them together.
Agreed, but you could do them back to back on the
Back
same
to
night.
back, right.
I think we could, because they're, especially the open space, the new
Floodplain
zoning
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
And that's a whole new district, but it's pretty straightforward. It's the floodplain one. So I would be more than willing to just do them both on the same night with two separate public meetings and then two
And then you-
actions that night.
It would just be a slightly longer meeting, and then you just wouldn't have a second meeting in July.
Second quarter financials, then we wouldn't see them till August.
You would see those beginning of August, correct. Correct.
And
Not that I could send them to you ahead of time. You just review them as a board.
Yep.
The first meeting in August.
one thing that also has been in the back of my mind for a while, because it's happening in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods, is the short-term rental thing.
Okay.
I really would like to see that come before the board sooner than later because of what's happening. The houses that are going for sale in small residential neighborhoods are being bought up still and turned into long-term unhosted B&Bs. Yeah.
What is to come before the board? What is
Well,
outstanding?
we were waiting for the data from the company that was going to compile
Copy.
it all
Thank
to
you.
see what we had or not.
Thank you.
And I guess that, huh?
Preston has reached out. We are hoping that we will have everything by the end of the month is the goal.
But when did we start collecting the data? I can't.
April 1st, I believe
Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the data,
We're gonna have a lot of data.
it'll have a breakdown of what we have, but that's not changing what's happening.
Right.
I mean, some towns have tackled this in different ways. Some towns have put a cap on it. Some guys have put a moratorium on it. Some guys have done it through their zoning where it's been a conditional use. And I think it's worth for us to have a discussion once that data comes in, or if not sooner, if it doesn't come in by the end of June, because it's happening. And I don't know what the direction the board would like to take regarding this. We could sit back and just have the data and do nothing. That is an option. Or we could look at it and decide that there's something that we could do or not, you know.
But you're saying we wouldn't see that data until July? And then you would have because this would be our last meeting in June. So we
Correct.
wouldn't see.
But that's an option. You guys may want to have two meetings, I'm just throwing it
Well,
out
then
there.
maybe we have to wait and see when we get that data, because that could be a whole meeting in itself, easily.
Right, and we engaged this firm to get the data to make the decisions.
Yeah.
Right.
So and I have no problem having a discussion about it, but
No, I
having
know.
a discussion about it now versus before we engage them,
Yeah. We're missing a big part of
Yeah.
it without that data. I totally agree with that, too. But if it comes in, maybe I was thinking that we have this June meeting, and if it comes like a week before it, and we're not going to have the data, and we don't have much, we could just cancel it.
I'm unavailable June 21st.
And Ariana was not going to be here either.
I would have to zoom in for the June 21st and the second meeting in July. Both those dates, I have travel that I can't move.
Would you be able to participate with Zoom?
I can participate via Zoom on either of those. So personal preference would be big, long meeting on July 5th, big, long meeting on August, first week in August. Sounds lovely, but that's my personal convenience. I'll do whatever we need to do.
All right,
Well, and I can't be here on the 21st.
that's fine. We understand. The summertime's coming in, people have, yep.
Another question for.
Hugh, do you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Arnie, just to remind the select board, as you started to talk about the short-term rentals, one of the things the planning commission put in our recommendations to the select board was a variety of other sorts of options should you choose to do additional regulations. we did a lot of work to look around the different towns in Vermont and across the country, actually, to see what other people were doing above and beyond just the basic registration. So I'm not suggesting that anything needs to be done, but what I will say is, once you get the data, if the select board feels they need to look at additional options for short-term rentals, I'd be happy to either recirculate, or in the packet material from way back when, we provided a pretty comprehensive list of additional things that other towns in the surrounding areas were doing with respect to regulating short-term rentals. So I just wanted to share that.
That would be extremely helpful, Q. I appreciate that.
I can dig it all back out.
All
We
right.
did-
Yeah, I do remember that
I
list
need
that
to
was
see
there
it again.
when this discussion first started. And that would be some important information to have as we go forward with this discussion. The
And-
data plus that list.
Well, and also, Hugh, if there's any updates, because that was 6 months ago, right? If you
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely sort of scan what's happened recently, because there's actually been some things that different municipalities have tried, and they've been actually challenged in court, and they're probably not really going so well. So some things are happening that are not really panning out from a legal point of view, and there could be some other things that different towns have tried or that are doing that weren't on that original list, so we can certainly refresh that.
Well, let's see if we can gather as much information as we can from all the resources that we have, get the data from the group that we've hired to get this data, and have this discussion.
So you want me to wait until we have the data from the group?
Yeah, I think
And that gives the
we almost
planning
have to
commission
have
time to
that.
update their data,
Yeah.
their information. And then when we collect that, then I'll let you know, and we can decide if you want to have a second meeting.
All right.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything for future agenda items or new business? All set? Would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Leaves the motion.
Second?
Ariana's the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Want to stay longer? Anything else to talk about?
By themselves.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.